Hello and welcome to the Microsoft 365 AMA. Adding our panel. Where is everybody? Let's see, more people. And we'll music to turn that down. So, thank you everybody for joining and welcome. Hello everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
I was looking back through. It's been 2 years since we did the last live stream.
Wow.
And for those that don't know some of the background story, we started this on, I think, week 3 of the pandemic. I'm trying to remember the exact timing, roughly around that. And we thought we'll do this a weekly thing until the pandemic, everything opens back up. We did 57 weekly episodes of the live stream before moving to our video model that we've been doing ever since. So it's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
So,
Thank you, Crow.
but it's great to do this for everybody. I know we're
back.
When we do the recordings, we only have from 3 to 5 of us generally on there at a time. And so we're still missing a couple people that were hopefully Hal and Sean join in here soon. But we've got others that couldn't make it, Michelle, Neil, and Max, and a few others, but that are part of the crew. But it's great to see everybody and go in. So I know when we were doing our live streams, we'd go through and we'd talk about news first. I know there's so much to cover there before Mike does his shtick.
Some of it was news, some of it was not news. But that was a segment we got into. I think you actually asked me at one point. You said, "Hey, can you just put some stuff together and talk about it, from a news standpoint?" And I did it, and I kind of twisted a little bit, and it took off from there. So.
Look at that! I've got a little annoying banner to run through the bottom as well. All these new tools. Sorry.
What a marketing person. Gee,
yeah.
Look at that.
Well,
He's kind of a marketing guy. It's his thing, right?
Yeah. Well, one thing too is for anybody that's watching in. Of course, we'll say this several times during the stream. If you're wherever you're watching this, if you have questions, you'd like to join in the conversation, just say hello. Please just drop us a line comment, and we'll pick it up and see it. And then this, I should also point out that this episode is being sponsored by Techie Gurus. There's some logos behind us as we pop in and out. Oh, and there's Jonathan. And he's added in. There we go. At least we now have balance in the screen there. So, but he looks frozen. Yes. And he's phasing out. There he is. So he's on his old AOL dial-up, so it's a bit...
And he's got a shiny new acronym there at the end.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Well, so with that, let's just jump into it. We've got a number of questions for folks that are new to the AMA format. What we do in the recordings is we generally have a spreadsheet of questions that were asked in various locations from members of the community. And that we then go out there and we answer. Sometimes we walk through the step by step, but generally the goal here is not to we're not replacing a blog post. We're in the video format. We're talking through and trying to hopefully explain some of the background of why this person might be having an issue, some of the solutions for that, other things that they might consider. So it is hopefully complementary to the fabulous blog posts that are out there that are answering some of these questions. And sometimes, all right, there he is.
So
back again.
Mr. Christian,
Yes.
Christian, do you want me to do the news first or?
We're going to start there. I'm getting the setup for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm just checking.
But
it sounds like you're just going to skip right over me.
No.
Going to pass him up. Yep. Okay.
Boy, I love getting back to this unpolished, anybody can say anything at any time format.
I thought you said you were going to block Mike, so this didn't happen.
Hey.
There's time while we're doing this. Well, why don't we do this?
Kristen, don't forget the disclaimer statement.
Oh, I don't
Yeah.
have that. Oh, that's right.
Oh, you have to have a disclaimer.
Oh, we have to have a disclaimer where no, we don't. Nobody knows everything about everything, and we're doing our best guesstimates
don't?
on some things.
I think we
and
have
these are-
enough people to no.
Well, Christian knows everything about telephony. So
Everything about
whatever you ask, he knows it.
and Azure.
Yep.
I-
Absolutely.
After this
Hang on,
last
does anyone have teenagers? Ask them. They know everything.
Those of you who know,
Everything.
And we
I
know
have-
nothing.
I actually had to become Christian's personal IT support last week.
Oh, really?
yeah.
Oh,
As I pointed out, though, Mike provided value for the third time that I've known him, though, so it's fantastic. He showed it, so we actually appreciate that help.
Where's
Mike.
my little heart bubbles?
I know we need that. Well, why don't we do that? Let's kick things off with the news, Mike.
Yeah, why don't we do that? This is the latest headlines from the teams at Microsoft. I call them teams, but sometimes they're just groups in their, herds, maybe, a gaggle, if you want to call it that. But what coming from the we're fussy like that department at Microsoft comes the ability to decorate your own background in Teams, but it's only in Teams Premium. But you can add a video background in just regular Teams. Now, answer me this. Why would you give the ability for someone to change their background into a video, but not give them the ability to decorate it? Is that a selling point? Is that something, hey, I'm going to pay for Teams Premium because I want to decorate my background? Is that, I'm asking, anybody out there?
No.
Okay.
No.
It just doesn't make sense to me. Microsoft goes and says it creates more personal and engaging backgrounds by applying advanced effects. It makes no sense to me. So that's one of the departments I think should be kicked out. But also from the same folks in that department comes a new meeting option and meeting policy called turn off copying or forwarding of a meeting chat. Again, Team Premium only. Now, riddle me this. Why in the world would you not make that a standard option in a collaboration suite? It's a new meeting option. It gives meeting organizer the option to disable copying and sharing features on the meeting chat messages for participants in order to reduce the risk of data leak. So you're telling me that data leak's only going to happen in Teams Premium. It's not going to happen in Teams regular or standard. No, it's only going to happen in Premium. Come on now. Really? Okay. All right. So coming from the it must be an ID10T error department. Anybody knows what that is, right? Okay.
It's a huge department. So,
Yeah.
yes.
That's Christian's department, by the way. It comes from a known problem when launching random M365 apps and getting the obviously incredibly informative error message of error, something went wrong.
Oops.
I love that one. It
I want that on a
says,
T-shirt.
Ask your
Exactly.
administrator. I am
Exactly.
the administrator. That needs to be a T-shirt too, I think.
Yeah, and
Hashtag 101 problem solving.
exactly. And that's it. That's all I got on that because to me, it's just there's nothing more, right? They won't give you any more information. I'm not going to give you any more either. So there. So the folks coming from the get off your ass and look outside department at Microsoft have decided to take away the weather as it is no longer displayed on the calendar in Outlook for Windows. I guess they figured out that since we're all working from home, we don't need to know what the weather is like outside. So
Weather's
we'll just
always
get rid
the
of it.
first widget to go.
no. Dang.
But mine is on the taskbar in Windows, so maybe
What?
they're thinking it's redundant.
Well,
Yeah.
what if you're running Outlook on Mac? Oh my gosh. Oh, no. Say it isn't so.
Yeah.
So we have a consortium at Microsoft now. A consortium at Microsoft, aptly named There Ain't No Chinese Chips Here, has stated that it, by design, that the Kanzi radicals and 4-byte Unicode characters are not supported in the caption of embedded files within PowerPoint. What or who is a Kanzi? Does anybody know? Let me tell you. I'm glad you asked. The Kanzi Empire, also known by his temple name Emperor Shinsu of Qing, personal name Zuine, was the third emperor of the Qing dynasty and the second king emperor to rule over China proper, reigning from 1661 to 1722. So it's kind of like, I don't know if you ever saw that movie called, what was it, PCA or PCU? And it's like writing a thesis on hieroglyphics. Why? You're writing a thesis on something that is a 2,000-year-old language. Who uses these characters in PowerPoint? Really? They need something to do. They get paid a lot of money. They need something to do. And finally, I'll get this over with. I'll stop the pain. Okay.
Thank you.
From these are not the droids you're looking for. It's actually a lunch pail group, though. This isn't like a consortium or a department. It's just a lunch pail group. They go to the mixer and they have their lunch.
Yeah.
And it comes a statement about 3 severe Teams outages that affected millions of users in the U.S. in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Now, if you haven't heard about it, obviously you don't use Teams, which is probably a majority of us. But some users may have been unable to access Microsoft Teams or some features. The company says in an incident report, this service health post is in response to some external customer reports, and I'm reading, obviously, this verbatim, will be updated with further details as we confirm the service's operational health. But they follow that with the following true to form of Microsoft, never updated its service health page for the Teams consumer service. It just says, everything is up and running. Nothing to see here. Move along.
Was this like end of day Friday? What that
Yes.
was?
Yeah.
And Monday.
Yeah.
Monday there was more issues. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
If you look around at parts of it, it's still, there are parts of it that are still horribly broke.
What?
Horribly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
The funny thing is, if you put in a ticket, they would tell you you should go read the messages. And I said,
Yeah.
don't you think I went there first?
Yeah, that seems to be the thing. Go read everybody else's complaints and problems first, and then come back to us.
But don't go to the status page, Hal. The status page,
Yeah.
no, don't do that, because that's always going to be green. No matter what
Yeah.
you do,
I've
it's
seen-
always going to be green.
Mhm.
Okay? That's just the way the lawyers want it. So,
Mhm.
but that is it for
Yeah.
me today. Christian, thank you very much. Tip your waitresses and on with the show.
We don't have to tip here. This is Australia.
Well, it looks like hey, Neil showed up, although we hit our limit on this. So hang on just a second. I'm
Kick me
going
out.
to.
I know you want to. Kick me out.
All right. I'm going to, halt. We've had enough mic.
Very true.
And there. Hey, Neil.
Hey, folks.
Welcome.
How's it going?
Oh,
Now we've got a whole list of questions where now we have official Microsoft representation. We can
yay.
You were just talking about Mike.
That means you have to be cautious about what I say.
Yes, yeah. No, it's all great. Well, we have a lot, and we have this. So this is where one of the downsides to using the platform is versus using Teams, and we were using Teams throughout the pandemic for our live streams, and Neil was on a lot of those, and so that you'd have that capacity and people could jump in. In fact, we even used like that. What is it called? The mode where you can have everybody looking like they're sitting in a
together mode.
The together mode.
The
Thank
other
you.
mode.
And we do that once in a while too, which is you get tired of that view, but it was benefit is you could have more people on, and so we're restricted here. So if you're not on screen and you've got an answer, just add it over into our comments there, and we'll have to show some of the comments. I've got like Dan who's showed up to his first of our recordings. And it's great to see everybody. Thanks for watching, Dan. We'll have to get him in, as we're going to do this on a regular basis as well. So we've got the spreadsheet that's out there. I know some of you are still making some comments. We've got several questions that are out there. So why don't we do this? So if you're grayed out, if you're not on screen and you've got a response to this, just comment. I'll grab that in the private chat. And make sure that you're added, and then we'll do our best over on the list. But I want to start the conversation. So the rest of you that haven't added your notes, please go over and look at the spreadsheet. But the way for folks that are new to the live stream, how we do this, new to the recordings, I guess I should put the banner up there. If you are interested in this series. They're all out on YouTube, and I think we've got a couple hundred videos now over the last couple of years. So we publish 10 to 15 per month. And so plenty for new ones in January that are up there. So definitely go take a look at that out on YouTube, and please follow because I want more followers on there.
More. I want more.
More. Gotta have more. So why don't we start this with number 47? It is a SharePoint topic. So for the SharePoint folks. So all right, everybody ready? Let's jump in with question number 1. And again, if you're watching, if you've got questions, you want us to try and handle them, feel free to comment wherever you're watching from, and we'll add you in. So 47, Eric says, our management is hesitant about the cost associated with SharePoint. Again, I say, what? No. I need to present a detailed ROI analysis showing the benefits like improved collaboration, document management, and workflow efficiency. How can I quantify these benefits to make a compelling case? It's a pretty broad question. Neil, go for it.
Yeah. So cost versus the alternative, right? What are they using today, and what does that cost them? And obviously with SharePoint, I'm assuming SharePoint Online, hopefully SharePoint Online, and obviously there's a cost associated there license-wise. There's a cost associated there with each license plus storage plus so on and so forth. But what are they doing today? Like, what is the differential between the prospective cost of SharePoint Online versus what they have today? That would be my response to that as a question, actually.
Yeah.
And I think that's a natural place to start probing for those questions. And I think we've all known people or small organizations that have taken the best of those free apps that we might have out there available to us on the web, of an Evernote or some type of Gmail-based account or some other collection of these cloud services that are, very low cost, if no cost whatsoever. And they can put together this package that gives them all the tools that they want in that tool set. Great. But when they start to grow that out, the complexity of managing all of those different apps becomes a bit different. Like, think about protecting the organizational assets now, having that unified login, having that established wall between what is work and what is not work. And when you start to get those small freebie apps or those best-in-class apps that aren't in like a Microsoft offering or a Google Suite offering, now you're introducing a high level of shadow IT, and that's something that some organizations will have no tolerance for. So I think it's very mature that you assess the return on investment for going to something like SharePoint, but it's not going to just be file storage and news pages or page articles or whatever. It's going to be the whole ecosystem that comes with it. I'm sure others have a lot to say in this front, but very interesting question.
Yeah, so I agree with this because I feel like they're putting themselves in a box only talking about SharePoint, because they have different apps, like they might be using SQL Server reporting services and other third-party applications, ERP systems, and other manual processes in these other applications. And if they look at it from the bigger picture and then try to say, okay, we can bring it into one place, connect them together, automate it, and then look at it from that picture, and then like the cost of all those other apps that they're using for support, maintenance, licensing, and look at it from that standpoint, they're probably going to get a better case of where they are just to get started from all these environments down to one. And then, of course, the resources that you need to manage all those environments versus bringing them into a Microsoft 365 world.
Everything's a trade-off of time or money. And I can tell you right now, I'm trying to clean up a mess from a very small business where everything was kind of stored in all these different places and bring them together just for regulatory reporting. And it's a nightmare. It's, several, probably 100 hours trying to pull everything back together. So architecting it correctly to begin with is the biggest thing, but you're trading time for money. And if that's the hardest thing to quantify, though, really how much time is saved. How do you prove that? And that's putting that on paper for the number crunchers is a difficult task.
Yeah, in fact, there's a comment coming in from LinkedIn about that. ROI is about time is money. I did a Six Sigma project on that many years ago, just to quantify tangible versus intangible time. And where are you now and where are you going? So when we do a gap analysis, and whenever we want to try to figure out what ROI is on something, we need to understand what pain is it causing us now. Why do we need to change? Because I think a lot of times people come in and say, well, I want to do this. Well, why do you want to do it? What is the pain, and what is the thing that you're suffering from right now that you want to go to something better? And let's look at the difference of where are you here to where are we there? And oftentimes what we find, I think somebody even mentioned this, if you're using all these other different tools and maybe you're spending money and maybe your stuff is stored in another place that you're spending money on that you're not thinking about, part of the SharePoint ROI that comes to light afterwards is all of that stuff is out there. We're spending money on other places, other subscriptions, other infrastructure, maybe even other employees that ultimately at the end of the day could fold in to then give you value and ROI against what you're paying for. But I think until you know the full scope of what your pain is and where you're going from here to here, you can't do a true ROI because you don't know what is it that you're changing from and to.
Yeah. And ultimately, the thing that, like you said, the additional ROI, once you get into the system, think of Excel. People are managing automated processes in Excel right now, and they could import it to a SharePoint list and automate that and save all kinds of time. But those are things that come once you're in there. So your ROI will just continue to build once you get there, right?
So when
and then add in
pulling
Power
this
Automate.
together, from an end user perspective, they're talking about that, the collaboration and the document side of things. And I would often go in and go just on something as a simple process. And I've seen it where we've saved a team of 8 people, literally a day a week. So when you look at that, that was 52 days in the year in terms of staff cost on just good collaboration on a document through SharePoint. So if you took that one day a week and you took it 8 staff, how much was it for 8 staff in wages for that one day? And look at it over 52 days it ends up adding up. So I said, if you can save your staff even 5 minutes just to have things all in one place and together, look at it, how much you can go to HR, get the average on an income. And, you don't have to have everyone's income. You can break it down. And I've even used it where I've pulled together, sometimes recruitment agencies have, or you can look online, have a look at what the average income is for a particular role. And you can go, how many people have I got that are AAs, for example? And you go, okay, we've got 20 and we got, 7 that are senior leadership so you can break it down. And I've done this with organizations in a spreadsheet. And you go, okay, based on that income, how many people, how many hours on average, what's the average income? And then go, if we can save them 5 minutes, just 5 minutes a day, what does that equate to in income? And then you can go from there and go, okay, look at it in terms of the cost of the licenses and what's the gap in the difference between what we had before to what we have now. And I found it just far outstripped, even if it was just 5 minutes by bringing it all together, let alone the benefits. Now, Microsoft have got on their adoption site some really good information. There's ROI calculators that are actually online as well. And on the adoption site, you've got white papers, and go and have a look at Rishi's information around Mocha. So that will also really help you too. So there's some great ways to be able to do it and some great white papers out there.
Once you add Power Automate, into the SharePoint ecosphere, you automate all of those processes, automate your approvals, automate reminders. I have built for the finance department, the procurement department that was in charge of the credit card increases and decreases. When people travel, they would call them last minute and say, I'm at the hotel right now and my credit card won't work. And so the P card people had to jump on their computers, get a hold of the bank, up their limit, or add hotel to their account. And then they have to remember once the travel is done to turn it all back off. And so I built a process that the people can request it, and then every morning the P card department gets an email that says these are the things that need to be turned on or turned off in the next 2 days. So they didn't have to put it on their calendars, they didn't have to remember, and they should not be getting random phone calls and messages. Those are easy to quantify right there. Especially the finance department will be able to quantify their own ROI.
Heather, you were going to comment as well?
Yeah, kind of back to what Kirsty was saying, and Sherry, you were kind of touching on this too, from a time savings, thinking of not just only productivity, but that keeping everything in one place, right? So if everything is in SharePoint, then you don't have that app to app switching, that context switching that's happening. When you have that, it takes longer for the person to get back into that. Where was I? What was I doing? That deeper focused work, right? So you have to think of it from that perspective too, that's harder to quantify than maybe like Kirsty was saying, like, let's see, how much money are we saving, or what's the time in it versus, the return on investment. The other thing is collaboration, when we were touching on that as well, the knowledge sharing. So if we know that we have this one central place that we're going to get that information or to share that information, and now thinking about Teams, pretty much, that's built on top of SharePoint. So, anything that we're doing in Teams with our files, and we've also got our communications and things happening there. I know there's some other things that kind of tie into it too, but the backbone of it is SharePoint. So if you're not investing in SharePoint, there's a lot of other things that get impacted by that as well. But I would say the two big things for me is that focused work and knowledge sharing, because if those files are somewhere that where they are, but they're not accessible to the other people that need it when you're out on vacation or something else is happening, or they don't know what decisions were made and how to find the progress of something in that list. Those are key things that can really help.
This really is a huge topic. We could talk for an hour as webinars on this on this subject matter, and it's because I think the points have been made. You're not just talking about SharePoint. You're looking at all of your business systems. There's a lot of things. So there's integrations. There is the reductions of other third-party tools and other solutions. So there's cost savings around that. So there's a lot of different factors depending on the scope of the size of your business, your goals, kind of all of those factors feed into that. So you can't just look at a one-to-one technology replacement. We have an old intranet and we're going to add this new intranet. It's not the way to look at it. Well, there's the next question, I think, is so slightly different topic here, getting into the Power Platform, which is popular with some people out there, I guess.
All the cool kids.
I suppose. Sue has a question. She says, I work in a company that provides field services, and we're facing challenges in efficiently managing field reports and customer service requests. I'm interested in developing a custom application using Power Apps that allow field workers to easily submit reports, access customer information, and update service statuses in real time. Can anyone provide insights into how to start building such an app? Additionally, what are the key considerations for ensuring the app is user-friendly, especially for our staff who are not very tech savvy? Again, not a small question.
One suggestion I would make is to kick it off. I've done this before as a project, and it was basically just using Power Automate along with Microsoft Forms.
Yes.
And it's already integrated. When you go to Automate and you set up the app, you can there's an option to include a Microsoft form within the app and be able to design that form just like you would any other form. So that would be the place where they could, actually fill out that information, get updates on that information. But then you take the Power App and you'd have to go back. You'd have to have some kind of database backend. Or something that could collate that data, because you're going to have a lot of people that are going to be entering data. So you would have to integrate maybe a Azure SQL instance, or even some kind of data lake or something to on-premises SQL. I'm not sure how you would set it up, but it can all be done through the Power Apps. Power Automate is part of it. but Power Apps is what really drives that. So
Yeah. Well,
But isn't that Dynamics? Isn't that the customer service?
it is, but Dynamics is a separate piece, and Dynamics actually costs a lot more money than Power Apps does.
Yeah, I always wonder though, is it worth it to have to develop? How much it's going to cost you to develop
Plus,
something brand new?
Yeah, but Dynamics is also a full CRM, right? So you're not talking about something that does a specific task. You're talking about something that can do like 1,000 different things as a CRM. And I don't know if they want to go. If they want to go that far, absolutely. But try and keep it simple. I would suggest using just Power Apps.
Well, I guess mine would start out. Let's document what the requirements are, because do they even need Power Apps? Because I built a very similar thing previously, and I didn't even use Power Apps. Use Power Automate. Use Microsoft Forms, SharePoint lists. They had tablets. What is there? There's a scenario we're missing. They're ultimately saying I need to go to Power Apps. I don't know if they do. I think there's a whole lot more information, and they need to start by building out the requirements, what's in those forms, then see with the tools that you do not have to do major development on, does it fit the bill, and then progress from there. Because I feel like they're just jumping into the deep side of the pool and kind of, instead of wading into that.
Again, this is one of those we need more information type of questions, because I mean, literally, I don't know, old school here. You could do all this in Access. So if you wanted to, you could basically set up forms in Access and do it that way. So there's 100 different ways you could slice it.
The difference between forms and Power Apps is whether or not you need interactivity. If you just need to push information into the system, then the Forms solution with Power Automate to put it all into the right places in SharePoint is fine. But if you need interactivity, if you need to be able to look up existing ones as well, then you're going to want to switch back to Power Apps on a Canvas app. And I noticed if you want to go an extra step further and you don't want to have to use the Power Apps app on your devices, there is a new feature. I want to say it's called Wrap, maybe, where it will save it to native iOS and Android apps that you can then put in the store, and the end users can download onto their devices directly as their own app as well.
So all good information, all good and reasonable possibilities are available from what all of the speakers have said. And it's all right. But regardless of what tool or platform you're going to decide on, you're going to need to have some type of data model that's more complicated than it really is, that reflects the requirements that the users in the field are going to have to capture. So I would suggest, as a starting point, do something very simple that you don't have to invest any time into Power Apps yet, or any of the other solutions yet. Maybe use a Microsoft list and just start to lay out what the right columns would look like, just like you would in Excel, to match that requirement, meet that requirement. And there's some built-in native capabilities inside of the list where you can update the form, you can move the columns around to have a flow of the business process. You can add dynamic rules. You could do things that can grow with you. But before you get into the tool, define the requirement should drive what that data model looks like. Regardless of the solution you go to, you're going to have a place to store the data. You're going to need a place to store the data. So you need that data model. So start with the data model and let that be the driver behind whatever you decide. And there's, time to maturity, like today, list, tomorrow, Power Apps. A year from now, hey, let's go Dynamics. So there's growth and there's opportunity through it.
I haven't had any experience with it, but would there be anything that comes with Teams for frontline workers that would be a solution for this? Because that came to mind as Christian, you were describing what she was needing.
I don't know what Teams for frontline workers won't allow you to do, but if you can add a list as a tab or any other app that is built, then you would think you'd be able to use that as your delivery platform. But internal to frontline workers, like what the building blocks are, I think they're just going to come in the Teams apps that we love and use every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually what I was thinking. If you so if you use the dashboard with Viva Connections that ties into Teams, we've actually done that for some of our clients where we've used that dashboard and put buttons that go to forms or information there just so that they can see it right there on their phone, and it gives them exactly what they need. They just click on the button, do what they need to do. And like Norm was saying, make it super simple where they can do something easily and then just kind of grow from there.
All right. Really long, awkward pause. Love it. For us too, when we're recording the videos, that's how we indicate, okay, we've all said our piece. We're good. All right, it's time to move on. Hey, again, we can keep talking, but are we adding value? All right, let's jump to the next question. So for those with the spreadsheet, down to 52. So here we're going to split the difference, SharePoint and Power Platform, talk about both in this one. Evan has a question. Our business has some unique requirements that the standard SharePoint features don't fully address. What? Yeah. However, developing custom solutions can be resource intensive. How do businesses typically balance using out-of-the-box features with the need for custom solutions? What factors should be considered in making this decision?
That kind of goes back to what I just said about the other one. You really need to build something new if you can get 80% of what you need out of something that exists and maybe build the other 20. But yeah, it's time or money. You can move with an out-of-the-box solution or 80% and move forward, or you have to go back and gather those requirements and figure out what people need.
And following up on that, how much money do you have? And how much time do you have? That should answer that question.
And do you have the resources to do it?
Yeah.
Because
And there's a lot of plug and play solutions out there from third-party suppliers. You know, sometimes you can find something that's really simple that will do it for you without having to build a ton of personalized content and, you know, start researching in the cost benefit of doing that.
Yeah.
What are you
Use the
trying
sharpest
to
tool for the job, right?
Yeah.
I'd also add that, like from the SharePoint perspective, make sure you're familiar with the roadmap, because some things that people are asking for, like as a PM in the SharePoint world, there's a lot of things people are asking for that are on the roadmap and they're in the pipeline, right? They're going to come. So make sure that you're not spending money building custom solutions when we already have something that's on the way. Right?
Neil, you have to share that with us now. You got to tell us all the secrets.
Roadmap's public.
Come on.
I'll share the public roadmap. I can give you a link to. You guys are all MVPs. You know where the other roadmap is. But like things like your SharePoint Premium, for example, right? There's a whole ton of features and capabilities and experiences coming down the pipeline with SharePoint Premium that we've never shipped before. So I think whoever asked this question didn't specifically mention what they were looking for, but I think understand the roadmap, understand what it is you're trying to do, and to other folks' comments, right? Third parties provide solutions. There's usually a way to solve a problem without just sitting on the shelf and waiting for it, or investing like a massive amount of money just to make it happen. There's so many ways. There's multiple ways to skin that cat, as we say, right?
Well, this is it. We're going back to the first question we addressed, the ROI, and figuring that out is what are you trying to do? That sometimes what's the value? What's the gap in the functionality? What's the value of buying an off-the-shelf third-party solution today until the features come out in the future with Microsoft? And then other questions like if Microsoft with out of the box or with some minor automation give me 80% of what I need, is it enough of a difference for me and a cost difference what I'm already paying for with Microsoft 365 that it doesn't make sense to go and buy that other thing? So what is that value? What is the opportunity cost of not moving forward today with another solution versus waiting for that functionality to be there with Microsoft or going and building that. So there's a lot of those factors. It's just back again to that ROI.
And once you've defined what you're wanting to do, then you can define what tool makes sense. If you're trying to use Power Apps because you don't like the single column SharePoint form, well, maybe you don't need to go all the way to Power Apps. You can just throw some JSON in the form and give it a little bit better layout, maybe a little bit of extra functionality. If you don't like the list view, so you're using a Power Apps gallery to make the list view different, again, maybe a little JSON, grab a Chris Kent video, change your list view to look like what you want it to look like, and you've saved yourself a lot of time and a lot of maintenance.
And one of the things that hasn't come up as we've been talking about this, I know Neil mentioned, being able to look at the roadmap and going out there to see, because I always try to recommend to people, if it's coming, maybe don't make it yourself. What I have noticed is over the last year or so, Microsoft has introduced a lot of customer engagement programs that didn't exist in the past. So if you're a business that is trying to make these decisions, before, there was a lot of these for these large enterprise businesses, they're building more and more of those programs for smaller and medium-sized businesses. If you're interested in a specific feature set, reach out to a partner or an MVP or somebody that that might be affiliated with Microsoft and see if potentially there's a customer engagement program that you could participate in, because two things happen. One, you might get the opportunity to use that feature earlier, and second, you can provide feedback that can influence what that feature does or how it goes forward, which means that you're going to get more out of it and potentially maybe even get to do that for a lot cheaper than it would cost you to build it yourself.
Yep. All right. I do want, so I want to go back in the comments, and Jackie had a question. I'll post it up on the screen here. Is we were back when we were talking about SharePoint first time. Is Copilot going to take over SharePoint? Couple comments here, Jackie. One, there's no hyphen in Copilot. It's just a single word. I mean, that is akin to spelling SharePoint with a lowercase p. So just be aware of that. Jackie, I don't want people just judging you. You're asking a valid question out there. The second thing I would add is, yes, it's taking over the world. It's everything. It's everywhere. So, yeah. I don't know if anybody else wanted to add some thoughts around this. I know that Sean also commented about the cost and how, answered that a little bit, but yeah, there's a lot that's happening in that space. And I know we've got let me see if on our list, I think we're not covering Copilot on this. There are a couple of questions.
What? There's a live stream with no Copilot topic? Are you kidding?
Well, we can talk.
How refreshing.
I'm
insane.
I looked into the cost just for me alone.
Well, you know what? We're going to add it in. It wasn't highlighted. It's next now. Let's do it. Let's. So we're gonna do it now. So
expensive.
Stephanie asked the question. This kind of will go into some of what Jackie was asking. Yeah. Stephanie says Microsoft announced new personal pricing for Copilot and also lowered the number of users required for the Enterprise Edition. I'm still not sure of the differences between versions, but the real concern is how Copilot interacts with older versions of Office. Do we need to be on the latest versions of all software to take advantage of Copilot? It's a great question.
So Caruana and her team yesterday did a whole live stream and a presentation on the different SKUs and the purposes and the, which license for what. There's personal Copilot, there's the enterprise Copilot, and it was very informative. I thought it was a really good, clear kind of model of what to expect from which one. The fact that the personal one doesn't leverage any enterprise level, the Copilot model is not being fed by business information. It's being, that's within your security for your tenant. And there was a lot of questions about that. It's like, if we turn on Copilot for our business, are you using that for the people out in the rest of the world to feed and teach your model? And they're like, no, they're separate. Just like you have 2 separate logins for the personal Microsoft accounts, which are like your Outlook, MSN, all those accounts, versus your enterprise accounts. That same security wall exists for the data. So I believe it was recorded. I'll see if I can find the link for that. But it was a very, very good, clear session and demystified a lot of things for me personally, because I had the same question.
When you read the documentation about the minimum requirements for Copilot, you do need to be on I think it's called the current channel or the current release for the Office 365 apps. So like the desktop apps physically need to get updated to have like the Copilot tooling in it. So yes, you have to have that. You have to have the licensing.
You have to go from O365 to M365.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
There you go.
then once you have that, then you can go for the Copilot license.
Yeah.
And if the apps are an issue, then you can use the cloud versions of the applications. It still has Copilot functionality inside of it.
Yeah, and just to add to something Shari was saying, right, about the segmentation, even in the enterprise version, the data that you'll see or that Copilot will use to assist you when you're generating content or asking questions, it respects all of the permission models, all of the things like labeling, all of the information barriers. So if Norm, for example, was to make a query in a tenant that we shared and I'd information barrier protected some data from a group that he was in, that data would not be used to form the result of the response that he would ask the question for. So it's very, 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 very well segmented in that space.
The key here too around this, and this is where governance comes in, is it respects permissions. It doesn't respect views. So if there have been people that have been using, they can't see it, so they don't have access as permissions. They may be in a world of hurt when they go to use Copilot, because it will present information to them that maybe they didn't know is there. So this is a good opportunity for people to go out and look at their permissions and make sure that their permissions are set up properly.
So putting my Microsoft hat on, SharePoint Premium oversharing, right? The oversharing, the new things that we're releasing with SharePoint Premium. I'm not a salesman, but just go look at that. The oversharing links and the oversharing features we have in the advanced management dashboards will help you in this space. Taking my salesman hat off right now.
Yeah. These are good things to be talking about for an organization that is investing all of their information assets into a platform like SharePoint Office 365. It is important to know that you might have overshared content, that you might have things that are not governed the way that you expected. Let's not forget, a lot of organizations rushed to the cloud when the pandemic hit. Some shortcuts in a traditional governance sense had to have been taken. So now's a great time to clean up. It's never too late. It's not about fear mongering. There's probably more opportunity with Copilot than people realize for personal productivity. So I think it's a good thing that people are willing to consider their exposure. I remember when Delve was I first experienced Delve, and I could see things that I had no idea I had access to, but it was a great opportunity to start remediation. And I think Copilot is going to do that for a lot of organizations.
Well, yeah, the oversharing reports and the advanced sharing reports in the, it was previously Syntex, now SharePoint Advanced Management, definitely worth a look. They'll definitely help any organization understand where their sharing is getting out of control.
Yep.
So
I use those tools as part of a quarterly maintenance assessment for clients, so that they have an understanding that things are being shared that shouldn't be, and you know who they're shared with. So I love those.
and we're adding a whole bunch of new features to that over the next kind of quarter. So watch out for those.
The one thing I do know is don't wait until you've done all your data remediation and cleanup and all those things, because people are constantly putting information in. You're never going to be able to sweep everything under the rug. It might get exposed. You just got to do constant work. Get started, do it right now, and see what's broken and fix it. Because if you're going to wait, you'll never get there.
Garbage in, garbage out, right?
Invest in governance. Just invest in governance now.
And training around it. And what does that look like? With security training and sharing, and get your end users on the journey. Teach them how to use it so you can get a return on your investment. Because I've seen it where if they're just doing even some of the basics, they were getting a little stuck. So you're just going to need to invest a little bit of time on top of it, and then you're going to get a lot out of it in terms of productivity from the end user, let alone all of the technical side of it and the benefits it's going to bring.
Look at the ROI we're identifying for these past questions.
Yeah.
Had to add myself back to the stage to be able to speak up and move on to the next question.
Welcome back.
Well,
Our MC was taking a break.
I was going to say, I think he took a break.
Yeah. Well, I've got so a couple more SharePoint questions, and then we'll jump into. We've got an Azure question on here
Come on.
as well.
Really?
I don't know if there's any other. I just like Dan's comment about. I'll put it up again about Delve. If you didn't see that one. Well, there's the other one is the common question. How do we turn it off?
Yeah.
Then is this question.
How many times do we hear that?
How fast is it going to go from how do I get Copilot to how do I shut it down? Like we need a betting pool for how fast it's going to go from one to the other.
It's already coming up. I mean, the whole question, this is a different topic. We don't have a question around it, but it's around governance around Copilot. So you have a lot of people that are out there, a lot of companies that are coming up with like guidance. And here's the dirty little secret, everybody. It's the exact same stuff you should have been doing to clean up your data 20 years ago. It's all still relevant. It's yes, there are some new assets and new products. There's sensitivity labels. There's kind of all the new features that are out there, but it's about metadata management, permissions, and information architecture.
Can we?
As Danielle said, securing labeling data and even having different data repositories where it can't even pull from, and you go, that's a whole different, that sits in another, maybe even another tenant where you go, that all is there, highly confidential, doesn't get pulled in no matter what, and separate your data if you need to.
Can we clarify something that it bothers me a little bit, because this came up in internal conversations with the company. Copilot is just one piece of AI, right? Microsoft owns OpenAI. If nobody knew that, guess what? You know that now, which I would be surprised if you didn't know that. But it's only one model. It was a couple models, but it's only a piece of it. There's 100 different AI providers out there building their own models. UC Berkeley has their own. Stanford has their own. Google has their own. It's not just we focus on Copilot, but users could be using any one of these. And it's a matter of where that data is coming from, because some models are restricted, some are not. And what I mean by that is Copilot can be as tame as you want it to be, right? But if they introduce something into the organization that is not as tame as Copilot, then they are running risks. Right? They could be getting bad data. Now they could be putting out bad data. They could be putting out data, they could be at risk. So this is something that has to be really well thought out, and people aren't doing that. I mean, companies are just putting in allowing people to use ChatGPT and use, Midjourney, whatever, just because, hey, it's really cool and we want to do that.
Well, they don't vet and verify. So everybody just I go out on the internet and I search for something. I'm like, oh, it's the truth because it's on the internet. It's got to be true.
That
right?
old thing, that.
And now you're bringing that into your business world too. And people don't do their due diligence to make sure what they're bringing up, the content that they're bringing in is actually valid and current, and just be using it as a crutch. That's my biggest fear with that kind of that laziness that people have come up.
Well, they don't have their own governance around it either. They're just kind of letting it come in, and there's no guardrails. There's no rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Mike, Sherry, I want to add to that. So I'm as you know, I'm Microsoft, right? So Microsoft hat on. I'm in the middle of a project right now, which is very heavily AI focused. As you can imagine, a lot of our new features and new capabilities, we're trying to drive AI as being the primary kind of enabler, if you like, for a lot of those capabilities. I can't begin to tell you the level of governance that we go through, right? Even for one simple feature, we already announced this at Ignite last year, so I'm not overspeaking, right? Simple things like metadata extraction from existing documents and contracts. We already announced that. But the level of governance that we put around that and the guardrails around responsible AI, it's such a huge piece of work that every product team has to go through if you want to implement any kind of AI into a Microsoft product. It's to the point where the PMs and the engineers are so frustrated, right? We just want to get the job done, but we're really, really, really focusing on responsibility, right? It's all about responsible AI and doing things the right way.
That's something that's really been, it's been great to see. There was an online conversation a couple months back about how, in fact, there's a blog post by an MVP. It's a fantastic blog post where he basically says, Microsoft has a history. It's a cycle of pumping something out there that's not quite ready, hasn't been thought through from a governance and administrative standpoint, and that it presents opportunity to the partner community around that. That's refined. So it's innovating. It's getting faster and faster. But with that, over time, it's like, especially around Copilot, Microsoft was very upfront at helping lead the discussion around the ethics of AI and the need for governance. And the adoption site is much quicker to have that, or have some of this content have to be leading the discussion right up front, right on day one of the announcements around these pieces. So, I feel like Microsoft has learned that lesson. We talk about when SharePoint was released, we often talk about the fact that it's like the SharePoint community is as robust as it is, as connected, is because there was no documentation, there was no help. It was something where I used to joke, like, no, not everybody knows everything about SharePoint. It's like, yeah, but there's a list of people. I know that this happens when Microsoft product team members and the SharePoint team had questions about their product. They would call these external people. And we know their names. We know who they are. So most of them MVPs. It really is. It's great to see that Microsoft is being more thoughtful around lessons learned around the solutions. It doesn't mean that all the functionality, all the features are there to manage all of those things up front, but they're aware of those gaps. This is my perception, at least. I don't know if somebody has a different.
Oh no, it's the same thing. I agree with you, because. And I'm again, perception is, what I'm going off of here is Microsoft is not the only company that does this. They release beta and they call it production. So I'll give you an example. Copilot for Windows 11.
New Outlook.
When Copilot for Windows 11 came out, it was beta. Okay, it would fail half the time. Whenever you would ask it something, it wouldn't know an answer to. But they're using the consumer as their testers. That's why you have Windows 11 Insiders Edition. That's why you have the Windows Server Insiders. That's why you have Azure Insiders. The people that want to be, that Microsoft is allowing to, or Office Insiders, allowing to test this stuff for them, and be able to provide the feedback, but also fix what is broken. So it's the same thing with AI. They released it, but In my opinion, they released it too early. But I think that's with any AI, because now you have every corner, mom and pop corner store is going to start having their own AI. And it won't necessarily be, factual, or it won't always be, legitimate. So that's my take on it.
Once again, coming back from, we got a full
awkward
there's
silence.
backstage. I have to pull somebody off the stage to be able to get back on the stage here. But well, I know that we've got a couple SharePoint questions to jump to. So great discussion. Let's look at number 69 here. Lenka says, "Hi, I'm a beginner and I need advice on how to create an organizational structure in SharePoint." And she is a beginner because she spelled SharePoint with the lowercase p. So we know that's true. I tried Power Apps, but I don't know much about it. And when I create an application from SharePoint data, I don't know how to upload it back to SharePoint. Thanks for the advice.
I'm curious what a Power App SharePoint architecture would look like, but that's just me.
Why SharePoint though? Why not using Viva Engage? We can go better questions. You can mark it. You can have that feeding into your SharePoint site.
Well, that's the next question.
And can you define application?
My question is, the org chart. Is she saying like I need an org chart for that's
what I get from
people, or they're trying to do an org chart for like
how
their
to organize?
Right?
I think they're trying to organize SharePoint,
or do I need a person reporting structure?
To me, because it says an organizational structure in SharePoint, like she wants to display the organizational structure of the organization. So my question is, have you seen the web part called org chart? Two, a lot of people, you can use search to build, different things like corporate directories and have filters and based off the departments and stuff, and pulling from, your different features within, that from your profile, like your manager. That's how you essentially build your org chart. But you can do that for corporate directories and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of things that you wouldn't need to go custom development to do to pull the org chart information. Now, to make it pretty, you probably need someone who's a little bit of a designer to help make it look pretty, but just to pull the data, it's technically already there.
Well, I put a link in the comments in the spreadsheet for the Visio org chart wizard.
Yeah.
So you can extract it out to Excel, and I've used that to plan like the whole architecture of a SharePoint environment. It doesn't have to be used to create an org chart. It's just a way to create related hierarchies within your organization. So if they want to use that, is she trying to create architecture? Is she trying to create an actual reporting structure with people, or the org chart of a company?
Yeah. And if you want something that's pretty, that's already pre-built, there is one out there on GitHub that I've seen, probably a couple by this time because it's been a while. There are some org charts already built that already look pretty that you can bring in.
Well, and the org chart is built into SharePoint. If your Active Directory is properly populated.
Yeah, if your manager fields are correct, you get good data. But
could you do a flow that came from there dropping into Visio and the Visio part dropping into SharePoint and do it? Could you do that? Can't say I've played with it, but
SharePoint uses Visio uses Excel to create and you kind of have to refresh it. So you could create create it in an Excel workbook and then use that as the data source for Visio anyway, if that's what they're looking for. But
you could get super fancy and use the graph and then use Power Automate to grab from the graph and then use the connector and then link it in and then dump it into somewhere and then represent that in Visio. Maybe have a Dataverse.
You gotta have
Or
a
you
way of-
can export it out to
That was
Excel
crazy.
and create a Visio chart and publish it once a week or
Yeah,
something.
so many things you could do, but yeah, I don't feel like we have all the information there, or it's
Yeah.
not very clear to give her
I
a
don't,
very
I
straight
don't think she wants
So
a.
this
I
might
don't
be
think
one of
she
those
wants an org
if-and
chart.
questions.
I don't think she wants an org chart. She wants someone to tell her how to organize her SharePoint. Like, how do I make sites and site structures and lists and libraries, and where do I put them, and how do I organize my company's SharePoint architecture? I think
But that
that's
makes
That's
She's
some
saying Power
information
Apps, though.
Yeah, I was gonna say that only makes sense if you read the first sentence. If you read the rest, she tried to build a Power App to do this, and she wouldn't build a Power App to set up a SharePoint architecture.
Well, this, folks, is why it's important to when you're asking for help and for guidance out on a forum somewhere, is to put a little more detail and explain the scenario, what you're trying to do, is because so often like this one, my first reading too, I was kind of divided on, is it a SharePoint architecture question, or as I read on, I went the same conclusion. Like she's talking about org charts and. Yeah, like there are third-party solutions. There's the org, the app. I mean, there's multiple options. You can go build something that's out there, but this would be great if we could follow up with Lenka and ask some other questions. But we can't.
Yeah, I was with the architecture thing at first until I read the next sentence, and I was like, nope, she really means an org chart. So
I
but
think,
it's still iffy.
Can I say that I have
questions
so much? Oh, I'm sorry, Jonathan. I didn't hear you.
Sorry. I think the second question's unrelated and showing that she's new to SharePoint. She also, through SharePoint, tried to create a Power App and didn't know how to put the data back from Power App back into SharePoint, which is either a submit button on a form, a patch statement on fields, or something of that general nature. Maybe even a Power Automate flow if you want to get fancy. That's how I reconciled the difference is how do I structure my stuff in SharePoint? And also I tried some Power Apps. I'm brand new and I didn't understand what to do. I'm asking for 2 pieces of help in one question.
Possibly.
Yeah, Norm, you were going to add something?
I have a lot of empathy for Lenka and people in Lenka's question or position. Excuse me. Conceivably, she's just trying to get to an end result, making an org chart. Presumably, she's working in HR, and this is part of their ongoing responsibilities. And then they're going to use the tools that they have at their disposal. Well, I'm in SharePoint. I have a SharePoint site. I have a list. There's that Power Apps button. Let's create a way, and then you end up going down this slippery slope of God help the poor person in HR trying to learn Power Apps when they don't need to, or having to go through all these solutioning. Could you imagine being in HR and then someone like blasting all these questions at you about Power this and Power that and Azure this and Azure that, and it's like it's ridiculous. It's like it's really hard for just a normal user trying to get their job done. And this is where, all the people on this call, this is what we can see, hopefully are doing. And we, advocate for the users, try and map out a requirement to a solution that is something that they're capable of doing. And
as a recovering HR professional, I completely relate to this, every time somebody got hired, promoted.
How many years sober?
And I was the person that had to maintain that org chart and publish it and print it and post it and email it. And you can tell I don't miss being an HR professional.
You drank a lot during those days, didn't you?
Potentially there's another solution. If they have Visio, the desktop client, there is a way for you to do a custom import, so they can connect to a SharePoint Foundation list. So they can connect to a site and just import the data there, and then work with whatever shapes they want to work within the org chart, or work with a specific template that they already kind of have set up that they like in Visio, and then just bring that data in and you have it assigned to those shapes and you're good to go. So I think there are, if we take it back to the basics of maybe not having to work with Power Apps or Power Automate or those other things, as we were saying, like that might be too complex for really what the need is here. Visio, go to that data ribbon, look at your custom import choices. It could be an Access database. It doesn't necessarily have to be an Excel workbook that you're bringing in. You've got, I think, more flexibility there. And also from the learning resources that you have available to you online. We're asking more questions here of us to help you along the way too. We have some Visio MVPs we could, of course, reach out to and get some answers also if you need it. I think that might be a quicker way to get you up and running, and then also for managing it down the road, right? Because as you have changes, having to go back in and change that Power Automate flow or change Power Apps or whatever you're using, that might be a little bit more complex too.
So, I mean, I don't know if I missed a little bit, maybe I missed the point here, but for an organizational chart, and maybe the question was trying to say, how do I build an entire organizational chart, like top to bottom, and display it and show it out? But there's tons of features in SharePoint and Teams that already will show organizational features, right? In Teams, you can right click on a person and show organization and see those details. And I'm trying to understand, and like I say, maybe I missed something, but I'm trying to understand what's the actual scope of the ask here? Is it to show like the entire entire organizational chart, like top to bottom, several levels deep in one go? Is that the ask?
I think that's what we're assuming. I mean, without being able to ask follow-up questions, because that was my thought, was that if you're the danger of building an external solution, whether you build your own automation or you use a third-party solution, if you're pulling it outside of that to be able to go in and structure the organization, move pieces. Maybe you're doing a reorg and you want to be able to see all the pieces and move things around. Yeah, it's then dead to the live system, and that ideally you have something that you're viewing that information, you're making changes there in the system, not outside the system, so you're not having to do a whole bunch of other work to bring those changes back in.
Yeah, just leverage the profile services that we have, right? There's not only AAD, there's SPODS, which will give you the option to, like, we have dotted line scenarios, and you can take an individual user and you can see their dotted line connection to their manager and so on and so forth. So there's a whole, all the data's there. It's right. To the folks that were speaking prior to me, it's just a case about how do you build the canvas that displays that information if they want something more complex than what we have already.
Well, let's so the next question is, and again, I think this is one of those where some follow-up questions with Lenka, I think, would go a long way, but I think we've talked a lot about it. We've got another SharePoint question I want to make sure we have time for. Got two more questions to handle. So Christine says, I am trying to add a SharePoint communications feed on my site where employees can post questions and have one of the site owners respond to them like a community forum. The goal is a learning page where everyone can read questions and answers given.
Yeah, this was my pet question for this set, I think. Definitely use the sharpest tool for the job. People tend to focus on whatever tool is new or special to them, and SharePoint's not always the answer. Yes, SharePoint communication sites are great, but that's not the tool that was meant to be a forum. That's what Yammer, now known as Viva Engage, is for. So you can connect those two. They're completely integratable. So you can bring your feed from Viva Engage into a SharePoint site so you can centralize it. But that was the whole point of what Yammer was, the differentiator between Yammer, Teams, and SharePoint at that when they were originally released. Was Yammer was supposed to be building communities and giving people that opportunity, and having that moderator that can field the questions and answer them and decide who can field the questions and who can answer them. But it doesn't mean it has to live just in Viva Engage or, again, what used to be called Yammer. Bring it into SharePoint. So if that's where they're working, or bring it into Teams if that's where they're working, you want to, store and use the right tool, but surface it where people are most productive.
And that's what I answered in the last one because I kept reading the questions and did the wrong one. I heard what you listed out, and then I read the next one too, and I went,
Yeah, you just you went above it. You just like, I've already moved on from this last one.
Back, yeah, that was
just move on. That's right. Yeah, it's a and I know this is a topic that we've discussed with our recordings through this series is that Microsoft is really trying to move, or the SharePoint organization is trying to move away from this idea of SharePoint as a Swiss Army knife, and it can be anything that you want it to be. It's like, can you go and build a solution that does those things using SharePoint? Yes, but why not go use the tools that were built, that were designed for this? Yeah. That it's integrated fully in. I mean, what the other side too is that there's a reason why that Viva Engage, formerly Yammer, we keep saying that it's like X or Twitter. I refer to as Twitter. It's okay
because nothing ever gets rebranded, right? Renamed, rebranded. But anyway, maybe people don't realize Yammer is now Viva Engage. I still have the Yammer T-shirt. Thank you very much. I wear it proudly.
But before the rebranding, Yammer adoption numbers were going up, and the cause of that, I believe, is entirely because of the deeper integrations with Outlook and primarily with Teams. So the fact that you can have a unified experience with all of these pieces, Viva Engage is perfect for this scenario. This is a core thing. And I've shared, again, Yammer stories from years ago that are this exact issue, where I was with a company that was acquired. And the first all hands, they were trying to answer questions and people sending emails. We had multiple offices that were doing a live stream. And I just like, what are we doing? Like, do we not have a Yammer or Viva Engage account? Log in, everybody shared the link, and people started asking questions and then answering them in real time. And we would flag to the live speaker, hey, there's a question that came through on Yammer that asked this. And then we would capture their response and add it in. 6-8 months later, we acquired another company, had another all hands, went through and were answering questions for those employees. I came late to the all hands and realized people were already in Yammer and accessing the questions, the same questions, redirecting people to that and adding to the knowledge base within that. I mean, it's perfect for that solution.
One of the good things about Viva Engage is it is literally about creating a learning organization. I mean, you've got the social aspect, but it's about flattening the lines of the business. And, when it comes to Viva Engage and you think about, the team is about your teams. It's about working as a team. It's a group. Whereas Viva Engage is actually about the organization. And it brings everyone together. So if you don't know who to ask, rather than doing all distribution list in mail, which is not what you want to do, it's in Viva Engage that you can put in information, ask questions to the organization where the other people can actually tag to answer. And it's not just about one person to answer. So, if you're thinking of your SharePoint site and you've got a community, is it you only want 10 people managing that SharePoint site that are going to answer those questions, or do you want the organization answering the questions? And that's where you come into being a learning organization, because you open it up as a community. That's what it's designed and built for, is that flattening of the business and providing those opportunities of, if you don't know who to ask the business. So, and that's kind of why we really get in and use it.
I think the best analogy that people can relate to is that, like, chat is you and I sitting at our desk or texting each other. Teams is like that cube farm, everybody kind of working there in that space. Yammer is kind of two things, or what's Viva Engage. It's like the break room where there's the bulletin board and you can post things and people can consume. And
here's what my cat ate today. Here, share it with everybody. I've got photos.
For me, it's kind of like Facebook.
Yeah, yes. Or it's the auditorium where you have the town hall and everybody can come by. So, if you kind of think of it that way, you don't want to have, in your teams, these all company teams drive me crazy because it's too much information from too many channels coming in one space and overwhelming everybody. That's what Engage/Yammer was for, and not having those all company teams.
I just like sharing the fact that at a few years back when they announced that all company channel in Teams at the MVP summit. So you had a very packed room, about 200 Microsoft MVPs sitting in that room. And when they announced that feature, they got booed by the entire audience. And people were like, MVP, we were upset. We're like, that's not the way that you use Teams. And so we got it. And I think Microsoft went and developed that feature because there were very large clients that were demanding it. And I think it was the wrong thing to do. Or, I mean, look, you know what? I don't care. Have it out there. I just never, I don't look to that. I stay away from those conversations. I participate in the chats, in the teams, the channel conversations that are relevant to the work that I need to do. I rarely go in because I never find any relevant information in those all company channels.
And that's a problem. People tune it out, just like they've tuned out email because they're just overwhelmed by it. And there's not those focused channels of things that they can visit when they need to know something. And they're missing the big announcements that are like, well, it went out in the all company channels. Like, oh, I turned that out. I tuned that out months ago, and I know all of you that do architecture are sitting here shaking your head at those all company channels, just like I do. So.
Hey, Shari, just from a personal perspective, my team work on that. So I'm going to reach out to you just to have a conversation about that, if that's okay.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. One last question to tackle here. And this was just because, hopefully we can answer pretty quickly here. Min says, hi, all. I have a question about Azure. Can external users, a guest user, log in to the Azure portal? I mean, I'm assuming like my Azure portal. How can we enable guest users to log into Azure portal, or is it not possible? Thanks a lot.
Oh, was that for me? I'm sorry. I fell asleep. We were answering so many SharePoint questions.
I did add your name to this, but sorry. Yeah, Mike,
just dozed off a little bit. Yes, absolutely. There's this thing called Lighthouse. And it actually allows, from a management perspective, because I'm assuming if you want to give somebody access to your Azure portal, you want to do it from a administrative or management perspective. Why you would give the average user access to your portal, I do not know. But you can do that as well, because you can give them access to the portal as, depending on what role you assign. And they will have limited visibility depending on what their role is in Entra or Azure AD, as the new Entra. So if you're looking at it from a management point of view, or you want to manage it for multiple groups, or something like that, I would take a look at Lighthouse. But also, if you want to, you could do it directly from Entra as well.
The one other scenario, again, a question for Min on this is that, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
Like I just did this was, with another hoster, was doing a migration, needed to give them access. And so there's actually
well, they have an avenue then. If they're an actual MSP, then they have an avenue to get to you add them into your account, and they have an avenue to do that. If they're an actual Microsoft, MSP,
right?
That's going through the Lighthouse scenario.
So that's another scenario. And I was gonna say, and what I did, which was, see, there's actually a button on there for my database, which you could generate the permissions, the access to, I shared FTP access.
But that's not true for all of Azure. So it depends on what they want access.
That's why I said, depending on what you're trying to do, there are different ways of providing that level of access.
Yeah, and I would go so far as to say that, do they actually need access to the portal? Because I would want to know what they're doing. You could give them a shell. You can give them a cloud shell. You can give them, something else that has, you have more control over. You even have the Azure desktop app, do you actually want them inside of that? So those are, we need more information depending on what their intention is and what they want to do.
Yeah, I'd absolutely build on Mike's comments there. Azure, I think, as a portal and as a platform, is probably the most mature Microsoft product that has role-based access control.
I'd agree with that. Yep.
And
that's Entra.
That's Entra and access to all of the functionality. So to Mike's point, right? What are they trying to do? What are they trying to manage? If you're going to give someone access to your portal, there's obviously an intent behind that reason, right? So what are they trying to achieve? And typically with Entra, role-based access control is the right way to do it. And then you can build on top of that and even include things like, you can include time-based access, just-in-time access. There's a whole bunch of things you can do. But I think it's fundamental for this particular question. What is the objective? What is the intent for the user that they're trying to grant access to the portal?
Yeah, and there is
I, as a Microsoft employee, I can go to our Microsoft portal, but there's a million things I cannot do.
Right. And
just because I don't have the right role.
One other option I need to point out, though, is also something they call B2B and B2C. So there are options there as well. So if it is a business partner that you're talking about, that you want to give access, to certain aspects of your Azure infrastructure, they have inside of Entra, they have B2B and B2C options, which you should really consider.
Exactly.
Well, with that,
more information.
Like we are at the end, everybody. I'm playing us out, by the way.
Goody.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for participating in this. It's great to do this. I know we're going to try and do this more regularly.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley.
It might even be monthly. And I know if we do it monthly, not everyone will get to participate at the same time. I realize that. And then we won't have this issue. Like right now, well, we don't have, it's pros and cons of not getting to see Jonathan on screen. So,
Well, and me too.
Well, I'm glad I made it. It's been a while. Nice to see you all again.
Thanks for
Thank
joining.
you everybody for being here, and we'll see you at the next one.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.
Bye, folks.
See you, everyone.